There is a bird that the entire world knows. A bird so famous, its name became a word in the English language. Dead as a dodo, meaning gone, finished, stupid enough to deserve it. For 300 years, that has been the story. A fat, flightless bird that walked straight into extinction because it was too dumb to run. Schools teach it, scientists repeated it, the whole world believed it. But here is what they never told you. The dodo had survived on its island for over 4 million years. It outlasted ice ages. It outlasted volcanic shifts. It outlasted everything the natural world threw at it. And then, in less than 80 years, less than a single human lifetime, it was completely and permanently erased. Not because it was stupid, because it had never, in 4 million years, needed to learn what cruelty looked like. And by the time it found out, it was already too late. To understand the dodo, you first need to understand its world. Mauritius, a volcanic island in the Indian Ocean, roughly 900 kilometers east of Madagascar. It rose from the sea millions of years ago. Raw rock, slowly swallowed by jungle, coral, and birdsong. No humans had ever set foot on it. No land predators had ever evolved there. No foxes, no monitor lizards, no cats, no snakes capable of hunting a large bird. The island was, by every biological definition, a paradise. Into this paradise, a pigeon arrived. Not just any pigeon. Millions of years ago, the ancestors of the dodo likely flew to Mauritius from somewhere in Southeast Asia, carried on ancient winds, landing on an island with no enemies and endless food. And so, over generations, something remarkable happened. The pigeon stopped flying. Not overnight. Over millions of years, each generation grew slightly larger, slightly heavier, slightly more comfortable on the ground. The wings shrank, the body expanded, the beak grew thick and hooked, perfectly engineered to crack open the hard, heavy fruits that fell from the island's trees. By the time it became the creature we know, the dodo stood nearly a meter tall and weighed close to 20 kilograms. It was not fragile. It was not foolish. It was perfectly designed for exactly the world it lived in. It nested on the ground because nothing threatened its eggs. It walked instead of flew because nothing required an escape. It had no fear response, not because it was primitive, but because fear is a tool, and tools only develop when they are needed. The dodo's world had never required that tool. For 4 million years, that was fine. Then, September 1598 arrived, and the first Dutch ship appeared on the horizon. The Dutch East India Company, the VOC, was the most powerful commercial empire on Earth in the late 1500s. It didn't explore, it extracted. Mauritius was a waypoint, a place to stop, take on fresh water, eat, and continue east toward the spice trade of Indonesia. The first recorded landing was by Dutch Admiral Wybrand van Warwijk on September 17, 1598. His crew had been at sea for months. They were exhausted, hungry, and low on supplies. What they found on that island would be recorded in their journals with a mixture of wonder and something much darker. Vice Admiral Warwijk's journal entry from that landing reads, and I'm paraphrasing from the Dutch, "These birds are large, lack wings to fly with, and are so tame and unafraid that we were able to catch them with our hands." With their hands, a bird the size of a large dog walked up to armed sailors and simply stood there. Warwick's men killed 25 dodos that first afternoon. Not for survival. The journals are honest about this. The meat was described as tough, oily, not particularly pleasant. One crew member, writing in 1601, described dodo meat as edible only after long boiling, and even then, barely. They killed them anyway, because they could. Between 1598 and 1638, dozens of Dutch ships stopped at Mauritius. Each one left a journal entry, and in almost every single one, there is a record of dodos being killed. One captain wrote of his men hunting them for sport after dinner, releasing shipdogs into the jungle to chase the birds down. Another journal describes sailors luring entire groups of dodos with fruit, and then killing every one of them with wooden clubs. The dodo still did not run, still did not scatter, because 4 million years of evolution had not prepared it for this. It had no fear gene to activate, no flight response to trigger. It simply did not understand what was happening. But the sailors were not even the primary weapon. Their ships were. Every vessel that anchored off Mauritius carried stowaways that no manifest recorded. Rats, brown rats and black rats, experienced survivors from European ports poured off the ships along anchor ropes and swim lines and disappeared into the jungle. And rats are extraordinarily good at one specific thing: finding eggs. The dodo nested on the ground, a shallow depression in leaves. No camouflage, no height, no protection. The rats found every nest. By 1620, Dutch settlers had begun colonizing Mauritius permanently, and with them came the full arsenal of invasive species: pigs, macaque monkeys, cats, and dogs. The pigs tore through undergrowth systematically, eating eggs and hatchlings. The monkeys raided nests from above. The cats hunted at night. The dogs ran adults down in open clearings. And meanwhile, Dutch settlers were clearing the lowland forest, the exact habitat where the dodo fed, nested, and bred to plant sugarcane and build settlements. Within one generation, the dodo's world had become a killing field. The last confirmed sighting of a living dodo was recorded on the 24th of December, 1662, by a Dutch sailor named Volkert Everts. Everts had been shipwrecked near a small offshore islet called Amber Island, one of the last pockets of land the settlers had not yet touched. In his account, he describes finding a small group of dodos sheltering there. He writes, "We drove them together and caught them with our hands. They delivered themselves to us with great tameness." The same words, 64 years later, still unafraid. He captured several, brought them back to the mainland, and after that, silence. No further sightings, no tracks, no calls heard in the forest, just silence. By the mid-1800s, naturalists were beginning to suspect something troubling. The dodo had supposedly gone extinct around 1662, but there were almost no physical remains, no skeleton, no preserved specimen, no mounted body in any museum in the world, just a handful of crude Dutch illustrations, and many scientists of the era believed those illustrations were exaggerated, invented, the kind of sea monster stories sailors were known to tell. In 1848, a British naturalist named Hugh Edwin Strickland published a formal scientific paper attempting to prove the dodo had actually existed. He spent years traveling between museums in London, Paris, Amsterdam, and Vienna, searching for bones, for feathers, for anything. What he found was almost nothing: a dried head in Oxford, a single foot in London, a few scattered bones in European collections, unlabeled and ignored in storage drawers. Strickland's paper was a turning point. He argued, correctly, that the dodo was not a myth. It was a real species, and its disappearance was not natural. It was the first time the phrase, "extinction by human activity," appeared in formal scientific literature in reference to the dodo. But the real breakthrough came in 1865. A schoolteacher on Mauritius named George Clark was draining a swamp near the village of Mar-au-Songe in the south of the island. As the water receded, something appeared in the mud: bones. Hundreds of them. George Clark wrote immediately to the scientific community in London, "I have found what I believe to be the remains of the dodo, in considerable number. The bones are in a good state of preservation." The site at Mar-au-Songe became an archaeological sensation. Over the following years, scientists excavated leg bones, skull fragments, beak pieces, and vertebrae. For the first time, they could reconstruct what the dodo actually looked like, not from Dutch sailors' sketches drawn from memory, but from the bird's own skeleton. And what they found surprised them. The dodo was not fat and waddling, as the early illustrations suggested. It was muscular, dense, built for a specific environment. The caricature the world had accepted, the bumbling, obese fool of a bird, was wrong. It had been drawn by men who saw it briefly, killed it quickly, and moved on. Today, there are fewer than 12 reasonably complete dodo specimens in the world. The most significant is in Oxford, a dried head and a single foot. It is the only soft tissue from a dodo that still exists anywhere on Earth. Not a skeleton, not a body, a head and a foot. That is the entire physical record of a species that lived for 4 million years. But the dodo's absence didn't just leave a gap in a museum case. It tore a hole in an entire ecosystem. Mauritius had a tree, the tambalacoque, also known locally as the dodo tree. By the 1970s, scientists noticed something alarming. Every single tambalacoque tree on the island was ancient. Some were over 300 years old, and none of them had successfully produced a new seedling in living memory. The species was dying, slowly, in slow motion, an extinction in progress. Then, in 1977, American ecologist Stanley Temple published a paper with a devastating theory. The tambalacoke seed was encased in an extremely thick shell, so thick, Temple argued, that it could only germinate after being swallowed, abraded by stomach acid, and pass through a digestive system large and powerful enough to do the job. The digestive system of a dodo. No germination, no new trees. The tree had been waiting 300 years for a bird that was never coming back. Temple's theory has since been debated. Other animals may also disperse the seeds. But what is not debated is this. The tambalacoke is still critically endangered, still struggling, and the dodo-shaped hole in the ecosystem is still measurably unfilled. One species gone, and 3 centuries later, the island still bleeds for it. The dodo didn't die because it was stupid. It died because it was innocent. It evolved in a world where trust was safe, where standing still was survival, where there was nothing on the entire island that wanted to hurt it. And then, one September morning in 1598, that world ended, and the dodo, trusting, curious, unafraid, walked straight toward the thing that would kill it. Not because it was a fool, because it had never been given a reason to know better. The dodo was taken by accident, by greed, by rats, by a world that moved too fast for it. But the next animal we need to talk about, that one was taken on purpose. There was a government, there was a bounty program, there were men, paid per body, and the last one died on September 7th, 1936, alone, in a concrete cage, in a zoo in Hobart, Tasmania, on a cold night when the keeper forgot to let it inside. The thylacine, the Tasmanian tiger, the last large predator of the Australian continent, deliberately, systematically, hunted to nothing. The video is on your screen right now, because what was done to the thylacine wasn't negligence. It was a decision,